So with this lecture, we're going to begin talking about fungi or fungus and take a look at what this group does. What is unique about these different organisms? What are their characteristics? And then also, how do we organize and classify fungi? Uh, we'll look at the traditional Linnaean system, but then also talk about some of the supergroup characteristics and how the new classification is kind of making its way into the fungal world. So before we jump in, I want to show you guys a little video here that talks about, kind of goes over some of the basics about fungus.
From such apparitions as these come spores, the fungal equivalent of seeds. They're so small that they drift away like smoke. But the appearance of these spectacular constructions is brief. As soon as their spores have been shed, sometimes after only a few days, they collapse. Now they are merely food for maggots.
Okay, so obviously we're looking at time-lapse photography there, and but the narrator's right. Fungus, unbelievably quick when we talk about growth and then reproduction with those spores, and then the next thing you know, poof, they're gone. So anybody who's ever gone out and gone hunting for morels, you may see it today, and if you're not picking it in 2 or 3 days, it's gone. Or you don't see it today, and you come back in 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden, wow, there's this 6-inch mushroom sitting on the ground that wasn't there 2 days ago. So as we go through fungus, we want to take a look at kind of the big overview and big picture of fungus, and then break it down and look at the evolutionary history as well as the key features and characteristics. Okay, so here's our big overview. There are approximately 1.5 million species of fungus. We obviously don't know all of them, but that is the estimation. Let me make sure. Estimated. Okay, so it's estimated that we have approximately 1.5 million species. So you guys want to do something brand new and novel in science, study fungus. Lots of opportunity here, lots of money, lots of benefit to society, lots of everything good about science in the fungal world. You know, understanding the bad ones that cause disease and health problems. How do we get rid of those? Incredibly important. So it's an area that a lot of people usually don't find interesting, but an important one. Without fungus, ecological systems would fail. Fungus are incredibly important in that feature. Now, fungus can be single-celled all the way up to multi-celled. It varies depending upon the fungal group that we're talking about. And we'll explore this, look at some, make it sound grammatically better, cellular. We'll talk about that as we go through the different fungal groups. When it comes to reproduction, that can be done through sexual reproduction and or asexual reproduction. And again, we'll go through this. We'll talk about it as we get into the fungus. But I'll warn you now, there is some weird reproduction going on in the fungal world. All right, so we'll get into those things, but just some weird, goofy ways of reproducing. And probably the big highlight features, let's hashtag these two. Kind of defining features. What makes fungus unique? They have a cell wall, but that doesn't make them unique. Remember, bacteria have cell walls, but they have a special polysaccharide in it that makes the bacteria that red or pink color or purple color, gram-negative, gram-positive. Plants have a cell wall. There's also a special polysaccharide in the plant cell wall that hopefully you remember. If not, we'll talk about it when we get to plants. But the fungal cell wall contains a polysaccharide known as chitin. So this is kind of unique to the fungal world. Their cell wall has chitin within it. Gives it structural rigidity, kind of that strength. Now, no, they're not strong and rigid like trees, but fungus can grow 6-8 inches in a day or two. It needs to have some structural support. That's where the chitin comes into the picture. And then the other hashtag, important thing to remember, okay, so fungus are going to absorb nutrients from the environment by secreting enzymes externally. So they secrete these enzymes externally that kind of oozes onto the nutrients that they're going to break down. They break down and digest those nutrients, and then they absorb the nutrients externally. Think about an animal. We use enzymes for digestion, but the enzymes are within the digestive system of the animal. We don't ooze it out of our hand and then suck nutrients up with our hand. Those are all retained internally. One of the big enzymes, or actually two enzymes, that we will highlight are lignase and cellulase. Oop. These two enzymes can digest, lignase, can digest lignin and cellulose. Both of those are components in plant cell walls. We'll talk about that when we get to plants, and I'll have you guys come back to fungus and go, okay, what decomposes a dead tree or a leaf or a piece of wood? It's the enzyme lignase and cellulase. So if you're looking at biofuels, those of you interested in that area, and you want to figure out how do we make gasoline from wood chips, you need to digest the wood chips. Use fungus to digest the wood chips to turn it into gasoline. All right? This is why this group is such an important group. So those are the big features to remember about the fungal world. So, okay, let me get our little LO here and make that a little smaller. So, okay, so again, the goal here is make sure you guys are comfortable with these big key features of the big fungal picture. And then as we go into the different phyla within the fungal world, I want you to understand some of the features within those phyla. Okay, so here we go with classification. Fungus have been organized into 7 major phyla. So there's reorganization going on here. There's some questions about best fit and best organization. And people are scratching their heads going, does this make sense, etc. What's the best way to classify these guys? 7 major phyla. We will not stress about all 7. We will focus on these 5 key phyla. So these are the 5 I will highlight. I want to talk about them. I want to give you guys the details on them. Excuse me, this table is a great reference point to start with. Say, okay, let's use a table. But we're going to hit these 5 groups. I'll talk about the other groups as well, just reference them. So as you move on, you're going to hear about them in the future, additional coursework, etc. You can say, oh, I remember hearing about them, and I'll let those other courses give you the details on those. If anybody is really interested here, take a course in mycology. That is a study of fungus. Okay, so again, a lot of need for this. Not many people doing it. Huge opportunities. Just saying. So, okay, so before we jump into these phyla, let's look at where did fungus come from? Evolutionary history. So when we look at fungus, we need to go back to the protists. Okay, oh, two, single, there. So the ancestor of fungus, or fungi, was some kind of aquatic single-celled flagellated protist. We talked about a group last lecture. If you're drawing a blank, hopefully you're saying, well, I remember a little bit. Go back and look at it. The 3rd protist lecture, when we talked about animals, fungi, we're looking at supergroup Opsitancats. What group is there? Well, those are the ones that gave rise to the fungus, some kind of ancestral flagellated protist. Now, evidence tells us that fungus have been around Okay. Evidence indicates fungi are about 460 million years old. We have fossil evidence showing this, saying, okay, these guys were around at least 460 million years ago. It is very possible they could be older, but we don't have any evidence today that would support that. That's something to be looked at. Can we look into the molecular data? Can we look at the fossil evidence? Can we keep doing research to try to get a clearer picture? Is this possible that fungi are older? But at minimum, 460 million years ago is when the oldest or earliest fungi evolved and started doing their thing on Earth. So possibly they came from these things called Microsporidia. I mean, we see Microsporidia today. We're wondering, is it possible Microsporidia and fungi have a common ancestor, or did fungi evolve from Microsporidia? Still a bit fuzzy, so we're not going to say, oh, absolutely. But Microsporidia are these single-celled or unicellular parasites of animals and protists. And they got these tiny little organelles that are derived from mitochondria. They can actually get inside of a host cell and reproduce and parasitize and kind of just abuse the host cell. So you think about some fungal infections work exactly like this, which is why there's the thought that maybe there's a common ancestor here between Microsporidia and the earliest fungus. And then fungi continued to evolve to give us the groups we have today. So again, the 5 key phyla I want us to focus on are the ones listed here. The tritids, or we say Tridiomycota, zygomycetes, zygomycota, glomerulomycetes, glomerulomycota, ascomycetes, or ascomycota, and then basidiomycetes, basidiomycota. So there's going to be theme here, this Mycota theme. That is the easy way to remember the fungal groups. We could call them phylum if we want, but if you see Mycota, let me write it here. Oops, see. If you see Mycota, that means it is a something XXX. Something Mycota means it is a fungal phylum. So it's an easy way to remember. And then the prefix, whether it's zygo, tridia, glomerulo, etc., tells you which phylum you're looking at. So it actually becomes pretty easy when we're naming fungal phylum. We just slap Mycota on the backside of the name of the group, and there you go. All right, so what we're going to do in part 2 is talk about general fungal features, get some more detail on those, and then start working our way into the actual phylum of fungus. So come on back for part 2, and we'll talk more about fungus.